Hello, I'm Kerry Shamblin, and I practice jyotisha, also known as Vedic Astrology. I have been offering a monthly forecast since 1999 where I track how the planets are moving through the sky and how they may be affecting our life on Earth. I also work directly with others through counseling, teaching, and mentoring. Hello, this is Kerry, and today I'm focusing on the December 2025 Vedic Astrology forecast. Before I get into it, I also want to let you know that I have been doing a weekly video that comes out on Saturdays that when we look at the week ahead. So if this isn't enough and you want to go even deeper, go over to my YouTube channel and subscribe. Check it out. Let me know what you think. All right, let's start with a summary from the 9 planets for December 2025. The Sun begins the month in Scorpio, joined by Mars and Venus, a trio digging deep, demanding truth, power, and recalibration. On December 15th, the Sun enters Sagittarius, shifting tone from subterranean transformation to forward-looking possibility. December 2025 asks us to uncover what matters, then to aim our light toward a broader horizon. The full moon lands in Taurus on December 4th, when emotional clarity surfaces. What was buried beneath pressure now reveals its truth. The new moon arrives in Sagittarius on December 19th, giving us a reset point, especially with Venus joining to rejuvenate and Saturn helping to stabilize by aspect. Feelings and intention align. Release what no longer serves, then plant seeds for what you want next. Mars marches through Scorpio early in December, fueling deep strategy, power dynamics, and emotional negotiation. On December 7th, he moves into Sagittarius, where energy shifts into action, movement, and direction. As the month unfolds, Mars becomes the engine for forward motion, urging you to redirect force toward growth rather than digging into old wounds. Mercury, after stationing direct on November 29th, spends a few days traversing Libra's last degrees, tidying up communication and agreements. On December 6th, he enters Scorpio, drawing awareness and analysis inward. Through December 28th, Mercury supports introspection, deep analysis, and cleanup of old miscommunications that can be applied to business planning, emotional resets, and strategic efficiency. Jupiter. On December 5th, Jupiter retrogrades back into Gemini, rewinding the tape as we review beliefs about growth and direction. What looked possible under Cancer's glow must now be reconsidered under Gemini's lens. Lessons and insights from recent growth are processed. Not every seed will sprout, but the ones that do need ample nourishment and caring attention. Venus spends early December in Scorpio, inviting connections to deepen, driven by intense emotions and honest exchanges. On December 19th, Venus shifts into Sagittarius alongside the new moon, setting a tone of heart space renewal, expanded values, network growth, and realigned relationships. Beauty, connection, and creativity get a fresh draft. Saturn is direct in Pisces since November 28th, lending gravitas to the need for detachment. Proceed toward structural integrity, knowing that defunct sections should be let go. Saturn demands discipline, but also supports thoughtful pruning and laying foundations for what comes next. Rahu continues through Aquarius, casting influence over every air sign through December of 2026. In December 2025, Rahu pushes ideas, networks, and innovation into Gemini, where retrograde Jupiter has retreated. A collective stir, a sense of reassessment. Expect inspired thinking and reimagined pathways. Ketu remains in Leo, pulling focus inward toward authenticity, purpose, and creative truth. As the outer transits swirl and reset, Ketu reminds us to keep grounded in our core convictions. Ego and old identities get a chance to fall away. Make space for intuition and inner alignment. For an in-depth analysis, please continue listening to the full planetary forecast. Full moon in Taurus on December 4th. The final calendar month of 2025 comes roaring in like a bull, with an exalted full moon in Taurus on December 4th. The moon is exalted in Kritika Nakshatra on December 3rd, and then reaches the full point at 19 degrees Taurus on December 4th. From Rohini Nakshatra, moon will oppose the sun at 19 degrees Scorpio, who's sitting in Jesta Nakshatra. Mars and Venus are also in Scorpio, flanking the sun, bringing up themes of power, diplomacy, and deep negotiation. With the other shifts coming during the first week of December, on the heels of both Saturn and Mercury resuming direct motion at the end of November, we could feel as if we are switching the channel back to our regularly scheduled programming, but with the added layer of already knowing what the end of the story could be. In some time zones, the full moon will rise as the sun sets on Thursday, kicking off a series of shifts, with Jupiter backing into Gemini on December 5th, Mercury moving into Scorpio on December 6th, and Mars moving to Sagittarius on December 7th. This full moon should give some clarity about where to reapply force or attention in order to move things forward after what could feel like a period of loss or struggle. With Saturn now in direct motion, it could be easier to let go, where clinging has become a habit. Retrograde Saturn could have supported arguments about why to repair rather than release. Direct Saturn will help us separate appropriately from what is actually limiting our progress. With the strong group including Mars, Sun, and Venus in Scorpio at this time, we have information that comes from a deep well, asking us to carefully strategize next moves for maximum efficiency, force, and connection. Full moon in Taurus, Rohini, informs us that above all, feeling, sensitivity, and all relations should be seen as beauty, resource, and nourishment. Retrograde Jupiter re-enters Gemini December 5th. On Friday, December 5th, both Jupiter and the moon enter Gemini from opposite sides. This will close the door on our Jupiter in Cancer preview that began on October 18th, turned a corner when Jupiter took retrograde motion on November 11th, and brings us back to the Jupiter in Gemini transit on December 5th. Take a moment to think about those dates and that sequence. Did a door open? Were new possibilities perceived? Was there a positive spark? With the door closing on those things for now, with Jupiter's return to Gemini, use that preview to inspire your actions for Jupiter's remaining time in Gemini through June 1st, 2026. Jupiter in Gemini is a very educational journey, so the upcoming 6 months could be focused on teaching or learning trajectories, creating space in the daily schedule for learning new subjects, or becoming more masterful in existing studies. This remaining time will be divided in two. Jupiter will remain in retrograde motion until March 10th, when he stops and stands at 21 degrees Gemini. This could This part could feel more exploratory, like regaining traction with an abandoned trajectory or trying new things in order to find the details of how the path ahead will look. The second part will be direct Jupiter retracing his steps traversed in retrograde motion from December 7th to March 10th. Jupiter will move through the last 10 degrees of Gemini once again in forward motion. The first time this forward motion traverse occurred was from August 12th through October 18th, 2025. This feels like a do-over opportunity, but with way more experience under your belt, the information you gathered the first time having been cured into knowledge. Retrograde motion of any planet gives this effect of 3 times, as the planet travels across one section of a sign and nakshatra, pauses, and then travels back, and then pauses, again going forward over the same spot. This feels very concentrated and scratchy, with a deep amount of attention going into one spot in the zodiac, which filters down to an individual's experience of that phenomena happening in the context of a personal horoscope. With Jupiter doing this retrograde, we are having the concepts of growth, wisdom, fairness, truth, and judgment going through a twist, wringing out what may be standing in the way of us staying on course. That said, as you manage the part of your life that Gemini represents in your personal horoscope through the next months, it is a good time to let go of what isn't fitting or serving toward the goal of growth and abundance. Not every seed will sprout, and it is a good time to analyze how to distribute nourishment to what is promising. Jupiter's return to Gemini also brings back the mutual aspect of Rahu in Aquarius, which causes a noticeable churning in all of the air signs through December of 2026. With Jupiter retrograde, it could feel very easy to let go of old forms in favor of innovative ideas that require a reassessment of risk versus reward. Just to be clear, the mutual aspect, meaning Jupiter and Rahu aspecting one another, will continue through May of 2026, because that is when Jupiter will move to Cancer. Rahu will stay in Aquarius through December of 2026. This could look like having to set aside time for brainstorming and redrawing plans in order to realign with both internal and external requirements. So, if you're not sure how 2026 is going to look yet, you are not alone. We may all have the dual obligation to frame out plans and schedules while we surrender to the reality that our reassessments are works in progress. Mercury transits Scorpio, December 6th through the 28th. The first week of December sees Mercury having recently resumed direct motion on November 29th, retracing his steps over the last degrees of Libra. This could feel like cleaning up misunderstandings, brushing off the dust, and resuming a push toward connection, new directions, and getting back to business. Mercury, our manager, cruise director, and weather vane, wades into Scorpio with purpose, moving quickly through Mars and Ketu's watery and enigmatic environment from December 6th through the 28th, suggesting that we keep our analytical and observational hats on when things go deep. Maintain perspective that our everyday experiences of life are for our own learning. Retrograde Jupiter will be reoccupying Mercury's air sign of Gemini just as Mercury moves out of the air sign Libra and into the more stable, even stagnant, sign of Scorpio. Mars moving out of Scorpio the very next day leaves Mercury and Venus to scope, analyze, and cleanse through the remaining weeks of December. The brainstorm suggestion could become a creativity storm, which is a further nudge to carve out retreat space and time through the holiday season, where the social pressure to show up and connect should be exercised with the balance of journaling, sketching, and creative planning, even though we're not sure about much. Mars transits Sagittarius December 7th through January 15th. Mercury joins the group in Scorpio on December 6th, which has been led by Mars himself, co-ruler of Scorpio, motoring steadily through his water sign like a tugboat, creating a wake for the Sun, who has been following steadily behind Mars. Mars is the strategic vision we use to protect and direct our force and power. As Mercury moves into Scorpio, Mars passes the game plan to Mercury and Venus to finish up the project while he scouts ahead. Looking ahead, Mars perceives the battlefield of Sagittarius on December 7th, followed a week later by the Sun. This is a good time to mention that as November becomes December, the steady moving Sun gains on Mars, bringing in the combustion of Mars that becomes exact on January 4th, 2026. The combustion of Venus is exact on the very same day. Look for something to pop around January 4th, when the Sun, Venus, and Mars conjoin in Sagittarius, joined by Mercury and opposed by retrograde Jupiter, aspected by Saturn from Pisces. In December and January, with the aspect focus of Saturn and Jupiter bringing Sagittarius into the spotlight, it may indeed shape up to become a field of engagement. Retrograde Jupiter aspecting his own sign brings unsettled energy. The troop of planets that will follow Mars brings energy and conflicting agendas that strive to coalesce into a unified force. Mars in Sagittarius also sets up a mutual aspect with Saturn in Pisces, which should not be overlooked. This is seismic energy that can move mountains. Having force and structure working in the same direction can be very productive at this time, while on the other hand, divergent viewpoints and agendas at cross currents could result in destruction. This dynamic turns on immediately with Mars entering Sagittarius on December 7th. Saturn is newly direct in the early degrees of Pisces, making this mutual aspect the most strong during the second week of December. Outside the scope of December 2025, it is interesting to note that the grouping of planets including Mars, Venus, and Mercury will stay in a tight gaggle around the Sun, crowding together in the combustion zone. When we talk about combustion, we are acknowledging the powerful orb of the Sun, the zone so bright that when other planets traverse it, we lose sight of them, as their own individual influence subsumes into the impact of the Sun. Vedic astrology can give the impression that combustion is not great for a planet, with the implication that the planet's voice or expression is lost. Stepping back from the assumption that combustion is detrimental to any given planet's expression, we could also imagine that the planet in the orb of the Sun is joining forces and finding amplification of a unified message. On a personal level, we could use this upcoming mass combustion of Mars, Venus, and Mercury as a process of running our ideas, actions, and desires through the filter of soul, truth, and divinity. Make every decision and action an opportunity to really understand what drives you at a heart and soul level. The new moon of January 18th, 2025 sees a very tight grouping of Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars in Capricorn in Uttarashada Nakshatra, a heads up, just something to think about as we talk about the entourage moving with the sun into Sagittarius and further down the road into Capricorn. The sun transits Sagittarius December 15 through January 14. Gaining steadily on Mars, the sun leads his press pool into Sagittarius starting in mid-December. The sun will shift to Sagittarius on December 15, followed by Venus on December 19th, and Mercury bringing up the rear on December 28th. This is a good time to bring our attention back to the structure of outer planets aspecting that has shifted due to Jupiter's return to Gemini. With Jupiter aspecting all of the air signs, as well as the opposing sign of Sagittarius, Jupiter's own fire sign receiving his own aspect is a positive and powerful draw to Sagittarius through May 2026. Additionally, Saturn occupies Pisces, aspecting the opposing sign of Virgo, as well as his special aspects to Taurus and Sagittarius. When both Jupiter and Saturn give attention or aspect to a common sign, that sign becomes energized with that compound influence of structure and growth. The winter solstice comes on Sunday, December 21st, when the sun is at 7 degrees Sagittarius, the degree of the zodiac that also points toward our galactic center. After solstice, the sun begins its Uttarayana, the northern direction, giving us incrementally longer days as the winter and spring seasons develop. The sun in forward-looking and adventurous Sagittarius, receiving aspects from retrograde Jupiter and direct Saturn, and surrounded by the entourage of inner planets, carries us out of 2025 and into 2026. This is a good time to reconsider, reorganize, reallocate, and redirect. While the big picture may not be well defined, you know enough to lay the groundwork. Focus on what works, what is efficient, what is comfortable, and what is manageable. New moon in Sagittarius, December 19th. On Friday, December 19th, the moon slides into the arms of the sun at 5 degrees Sagittarius, strongly under the eye of Saturn from 2 degrees Pisces. Both Venus and Mars flank the sun and moon. Combustion is already in play, with Venus set to cross the gap between Scorpio and Sagittarius just after that still quiet new moon moment. All of this combined points towards sitting still, checking in with your intuitive roots, and creating a concave shape that allows your cup to start filling. With both retrograde Jupiter and direct Saturn influencing this tight grouping of planets around the sun and moon, themes of death, breaking, and renewal come to mind. As Venus enters the scene, a rejuvenating breath is taken, inviting you to sit with what could feel like a scattered pieces as you begin to see harmony and patterns in the detritus of recent upsets. This new moon is on a Friday, with Venus also moving into the group just before the larger solar cycle of the winter solstice rings a deeper tone in the clear chord of unified renewal. The stark truth that shines through reminds us that the green of spring is just around the corner, but the cost of renewal this year is tied into the need for clean breaks and appropriate separation. Venus transits Sagittarius December 19th through January 12th. Just a few heartbeats after the new moon begins its waxing cycle, Venus moves through the deep and tricky spiritual void that lies between the signs of Scorpio and Sagittarius. This juncture in the zodiac speaks to next level growth that requires taking a deeper sense of responsibility from a stronger stance of faith Venus crosses this gap on December 19th, with Mercury following suit on December 28th. Venus rules our individual sense of connection with others and our collective flow of people joining as families, tribes, communities, and cultures. Venus joining the other planets in Sagittarius, an already unified field, reinforces a desire to connect and collect from a heart and soul level. The planets in the press with Venus as we move into January include Mercury, an ally to Venus, a combination that compounds the faculties of connection and communication, encouraging relationships, business, transactions, and market movements. Venus and Mars in the chat have a different energy, bringing passion and creative power. Venus and Sun together remind us that in any negotiation, we have to balance collective and individual needs. Mercury transits Sagittarius December 28th through January 16th. Mercury is the last to leap the Gandanta gap on December 28th, taking us into 2026 with a slate of planets joining the usual suspect, the Sun, in Sagittarius. With retrograde Jupiter and direct Saturn both beaming into the rolling hills of Sagittarius, we have a very curious concentration in the fiery sign of Jupiter. In our lifetimes, this will always be the case, that the Sun will be in Sagittarius during the change of the Western calendar year. Some years it is the Sun alone. Others, the entourage joins the Sun, or the outer planets join the Sun. This year, the active, enthusiastic planets Mercury, Venus, and Mars join the Sun, creating a sense of tentative momentum and positive vision. The last time this exact grouping occupied Sagittarius at the new year was in 1994. With a retrograde Jupiter providing a somewhat deflated sense of hope and practical Saturn warning against hitching your star to the wrong wagon, we have the active inner planets, powerful Mars, and the bright Sun tasked with getting up and moving forward as we must, with the resources and knowledge that we have right now. This is a reminder that despite limitations beyond your control, you are still a bright, creative force in the universe. January 2026 headlines. Just how funny is this? It's all Capricorn. So get that into your head. We have a full moon at 19 degrees Gemini on January 3rd. Venus transits Capricorn January 12th through February 5th. Sun transits Capricorn January 13th through February 12th. Mars transits Capricorn January 15th through February 22nd. Mercury transits Capricorn January 16th through February 3rd. There is a new moon at 5 degrees Capricorn on January 18th. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great new year. I'll check in with you at the end of December. Thank you for listening to this presentation. If you are interested in following my work, look for Kerry Shamblin Astrology on YouTube, Spotify, Patreon, Facebook, and Instagram. My monthly forecast is published in written and audio format on my website, planetaryinfluence.com, where you can join my email list or book a one-on-one session with me. My goal is to light your path toward a joyful and liberated life experience.